Okay, so who here has never practiced any kind of yoga before? We've all had a taste of some type of yoga. Okay, great. Well, let me explain something about yoga. First and foremost, yoga is the sort of thing where it wants you to take absolute responsibility for your own well-being. And I would say, if there's anything which is a global epidemic, I would say it is this, that most human beings are not truly accepting the responsibility for their own well-being. If people were to be asked, why are you this way? Why are you suffering? Why are you in misery? Why are you experiencing daily stress? They'll say, I'm like this because of my boss. Have you seen the type of people that I have to deal with on a daily level? Have you seen the kind of job that I have? Are you aware of the external circumstances that I have to deal with? And this is a sign of not truly understanding what are the mechanisms that are at work in human life. Because we can take any situation at random. We'll just make it very practical. So we take any situation at random. You'll see that there are only a few basic things that are involved in your common experience. So, you're in a particular situation. First and foremost, there is stimulus, sensation. What does that mean? Just information is pouring in to your five senses. Eyes hear something, ears hear something, nose smells something, tongue tastes something. This is just pure raw data, information coming into the five senses. From this, there is a reaction to this stimulus. This information is taken in by the nerve currents in the body, presented to the brain, and then we have a reaction. So what will be this reaction? Is it just a coincidence that if you put 10 different people in the same situation, you'll have 10 different reactions? Certainly not a coincidence. Why is this so? Just simply because the programming is different. The conditioning is different. Our mind and body are very, very machine-like in certain ways. Our mind and body have picked up certain ways of habit. So if you've had certain experiences in life which have strengthened the experience of stress, fear, misery, anxiety, if you take this collection of experience and strengthen them enough, then it comes to a point where now it is just automatic. It is instinctive for you to have this reaction of fear and stress. If you've had similarly experiences which have reinforced the experience of silence, restfulness of mind, peace, contentment, in precisely the same way, that will be your instinctive reaction to life. And unfortunately, most people's lives are just happening as a reaction to the external world, which means that if the external world is unpleasant, certainly you will be unpleasant within yourself. If the external world is pleasant, likewise, you will be pleasant within yourself. So if this is the standard of how we are going to settle our well-being, then is it not logical that our well-being will be very delicate, very fragile? How many reactions? Just a mechanical phenomena. Beyond reaction, however, there's a third process. Anyone think of it? Matt? Any ideas about that? So we have sensation, reaction, both which are not truly in our control.
Intellect that differentiates.
No, besides the reaction. Intellect which differentiates, that actually you do have a point. That is where we start dealing with response. What is the response to the reaction? In this present moment, so many reactions are happening in you. So many influences are there. But how do you respond to these reactions? Do you have a conscious response, or do you just let it rule over you? Do you just become a slave that's functioning out of compulsion? Or do you take a few moments to bring a deeper sense of attention? And just look at this. Whatever in your life you approach with a greater sense of attention, you have a greater sense of freedom. And the only way to be involved in life is to deepen your attention. Just if you're sitting in front of a movie screen, the whole film is happening, but in your mind you're lost in a dream world, still you're not involved. The only way to become involved in life is through deepening your attention. Now the problem is, how can we deepen our involvement in life while not becoming enslaved in the process? So that's the fundamental question. How can you live in the body but not be a slave to the body? Live in the mind, yet not be a slave in the mind. Live in the world, yet not be of the world. The only way to know such a way of being is to discover the way of balance, silence, and freedom. Now, what do I mean by that? It sounds very vague. I'll tell you a short story. There was once this master who had a young student. Day in and day out, this student was always complaining about the pains and miseries of his life. The master, one day, getting tired of his complaints, he just wanted to prove a point. So he told the student, go to the kitchen, get me a cup of water, bring with you a handful of salt, I'll tell you what to do next. So he did as he was instructed, got the cup of water, the handful of salt. The master then said, now throw the handful of salt into the water, have a taste of the water, and you tell me what you experience. The student did as he was instructed. He had a taste of the water. The master then asked, what does it taste like? The student said, totally bitter. I've never tasted such bitterness in my life. Then the master walked out with the student to a very calm, quiet lake. He told him, now you do precisely the same thing. Just take a handful of water, throw a handful of salt, throw the salt into the water, have a taste of the water, you tell me what you experience. The student did as he was instructed. He had a taste of the water. Then the master asked, how does it taste? He said, absolutely fresh. This is the purest, freshest water I've ever experienced in my life. Then the master told him, in precisely the same way, all the pain, pleasure, suffering that you've ever known in your life is just like a handful of salt. It's not more, it's not less. However, if you expand the container, if your sense of being is enlarged, if your sense of awareness, consciousness is enlarged, then all the pain and pleasure and all the dualities that your mind is capable of experiencing, in spite of all this, still you will find there is a silence, a oneness in you that remains undisturbed. So therefore, stop living like this limited glass of water, become the vastness of the lake. And that is precisely what yoga is pointing to. The very word yoga literally means union. At the level of your perception, when you come to know the oneness of the creation in you, then such a condition of being we are calling yoga. Isn't it not logical? If you are in union, naturally you're without conflict. If you're out of union, then you are within conflict. So, what do we refer to as yoga? First and foremost, I know probably you're thinking of certain postures of bending and twisting the body or other type of physical exercises. We are talking about a technology for inner well-being. We have external technologies which we're all familiar with. Probably when you think of technology, you're thinking computers, machines, your iPhone, your cell phone, or your car. That's one kind of technology. But how would I define technology? Very simply, if you're using the laws of nature to influence nature, to create a very specific end result, that is what I would call technology. So we have technology for growing crops. We have technology to control certain things in our environment according to our desire. To come here on the 3rd floor, we had a technology for that. You're just using the laws of nature to create a specific end result. So we have external technologies for that. Precisely the same way, there are also internal technologies, where if you know how to use your mind and body as a vehicle, this mind and body can become a vehicle towards well-being. And to me it is very important that yoga is transmitted as a technology, not a philosophy, not a belief system. Because in terms of our philosophies about life, we might differ tremendously. Such diversity that exists in humanity, you think you're going to get the whole humanity to fit into just one specific way of thinking? It's like you're trying to fit the whole humanity into just a small, limited cage. This is not a practical approach. Yoga always understood that because there is this wide diversity in humanity, you can't just give one kind of medicine as a general prescription for every single human being. There's different kinds of medicine for different kinds of individuals. So, when we talk about different kinds of yoga, we're just talking about different sorts of medicine for inner well-being. So, just to give you an idea of the profound diversity of how many possibilities have been explored towards this. So if there's somebody in this room who's, let's say, more of an intellectual individual, he's not somebody who's so identified with his emotion, but he's a very intellectual mind. If you're using the strength of your intellect as a method towards greater wisdom and self-knowledge, this is called Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge. In fact, the word knowledge comes from the Sanskrit word jnana, which means knowledge, and it refers to not just intellectual knowledge, any type of knowledge, even knowledge that's known through direct experience. That is also a kind of knowledge. If you're using the strength of your love and devotion as a method towards self-knowledge, this is called Bhakti Yoga, the way of union through love and devotion. How is it possible through love and devotion? Have you ever experienced it in your life? With tremendous intensity of love, it is as though the boundaries of your false identity start disappearing, as if the observer and the observed merge as one reality. That is also a kind of yoga. So if you strengthen your tremendous intensity of love and devotion in such a way that you lose your limited self and discover what can be called your universal self, that can be called Bhakti Yoga. Somebody else, he's neither these two characters. He's more of a person of action, a doer in the world. If you use physical action, work, as a way towards self-knowledge, this is called Karma Yoga. How is that possible? Unfortunately, most people in the world, they only know work as a means towards fulfilling some particular objective in mind, for some reward. And if you do not taste the reward, then a sense of disappointment, misery, suffering starts to settle in. However, if you just learn work for work's sake, not because you have any particular aim in mind, not because you're so much attached to the goal, but the process itself is self-sufficient. It's not a means towards an end. The means and the end are merged as one. If that is how intensely involved you are with action, totally involved in action, but just subtract one thing from your experience, learn to act without attachment, then that's called Karma Yoga. This will have a purifying effect on the mind, and that can be the method towards self-realization. So many different technologies for inner well-being. What type of technology are we dealing with here? We're dealing with what is called Hatha Yoga as preparation for sitting meditation. Have you ever wondered why have this huge range of physical techniques been created in yoga? Because it was always understood that if you just learn how to purify and prepare the mind and body, and then make an effort towards meditation, then everything in your nervous system is encouraging, supportive for inner exploration. So this comes from a very profound understanding that you cannot create any sharp dividing lines between your mind and body. As the mind has an influence on the body, what is the condition of the body also has an influence of the mind. Our whole being is one indivisible, holistic whole. So all the levels are influencing all the other levels. So just see, if you purify your body, transform the substance of the body in a certain way, most certainly it will have a purifying effect on the mind. Other types of yoga don't even touch that. Have you seen most Buddhists? They just sit straight away directly for meditation. They're not practicing all these physical postures. Their approach is different. They deal with the mind directly through seated meditation. That's a different kind of approach. But here we're taking advantage of the intelligence of the body. And this is the beauty of the intelligence of the body. Just think of this. Nature was wise. Nature understood very well. We'll give everything that is vital and essential to life, not to the mind. We will give it to the body. Just imagine this. In a moment of anger or agitation, your blood circulation stops. Your heart stops beating. A moment of anger, you get brain damage. Thankfully, that's not in your hands. Imagine if it was. No, nature understood very well everything essential to life, we'll give it to the body. 100 trillion cells in the body, each one performing 100,000 activities. Your mind cannot even produce 1% of the kind of effort and energy that is involved in this. So, let's take advantage of this tremendous intelligence of the body. And that's